I don't know, we got two phones going on, so I didn't mind too. Okay, so we're going to do chapter 12. And is it going to move forward? There it is. Okay, so here we go. Chapter 12, there's basically two stories. They're important stories, but they're two basic stories, not very complicated. We read through them, you'll understand them. They're not very complicated. The first story is Satan gets cast out of heaven. And the second one is about how God's going to protect some of the Jewish people who are going to flee into the wilderness, and they're going to be hidden there for 1,260 days. Two basic stories, nothing really, super complicated here. But we're going to start reading, and so Tom's the closest one. So if you'll start reading chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, and we'll do, again, the paragraphs, Tom, and then Doug and me.
Okay. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to earth.
Am I supposed to read?
Wait, I got one more sentence. Okay. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that it might devour her child the moment he was born.
She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter, and her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. The woman fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days.
Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and the angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him.
Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, "Now have come the salvation and the power, and the kingdom of our God, and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters, who accuses them before our God day and night, has been hurled down. They triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. Therefore rejoice, you heavens and you who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury because he knows that his time is short."
When the dragon saw that he had been hurled to earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. The woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the wilderness, where she would be taken care of for a time, times, and half a time, out of the serpent's reach. Then from his mouth the serpent spewed water like a river to overtake the woman and sweep her away with a torrent. But the earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing the river that the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. Then the dragon was enraged at the woman, and he went off to wage war against the rest of her offspring, those who keep God's commands and hold fast to their testimony about Jesus.
Okay, so we're going to go back over, and if you have Bible knowledge, and I think most of you would, there's all this symbolic language, which once you get the hang of it, it's not that difficult. So you go back to verse 1. And so a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet and a crown of 12 stars on her head. So that would be, I'll give you the first one or two, and then you can go from there. So that would be Abraham and Sarah and the 12 tribes. So that's talking about Israel, talking about the Messiah coming. So then, verse 2, she was pregnant. Who would that be? Mary was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads Yeah, with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on his heads. I just didn't think that verse was right there. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. What does that mean?
Satan's fall.
Satan's fall, and the third of the sky, of the stars, who are they?
Angels.
The angels. So there's the information, the only place in the Bible where we find out that when Satan fell, a third of the angels went with him, got deceived, whatever. Hard to understand. Nobody understands. You're up there in heaven, like you got the good guy, the bad guy up here. You kind of like knows who's going to win in the game. So why are you picking the loser? You know, don't understand that. Kind of confusing. But that's what they did. And of course, because we know this you wouldn't see in the book of Revelation, but because of a lot of different things, and actually because of the book of Enoch, and because it says Jesus died for us, the angels fell, the angels sinned, but the angels cannot, the fallen angels cannot get justification because of Jesus' death on the cross. Can't do that. And interesting enough, I'll just do a little tidbit. So in the book of Enoch, the first few chapters are really what he wrote. Some of the other chapters are really strange and weird. I don't think he wrote those. It was kind of added on. But basically, the angels that fell, there was about 7 of them that were really high-powered angels. They went to Enoch and said, could you go to God and ask him if we could get back our position in heaven? We realized we made a bad decision. Will you plead with him for us that our sins could be forgiven? He went to God and God said, no. I am not going to forgive you of your trespasses. You will not get away without being judged. So this is where we get that, a third, all that happened, right? And so then it's also tied, the heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns. So it's saying that Satan is obviously with the Antichrist, who's obviously with the false prophet, who are a part of this beast with the 10 heads, and with the 10 crowns and the 7 heads. So it's really, really big. I mean, that's really big. So then the dragon stood in front of the women, meaning what? Satan did what? When Jesus was being born, Jesus tried to kill him, right? Tried to get Herod to do it, tried to get him, it doesn't say. He probably tried to have her miscarriage or something on the way, whatever. We don't know that, but we do know that Herod tried to kill her and killed Jesus. So Satan is there. So in the whole story of the manger scene, here you have Satan standing there trying to kill the baby. Like, oh, this is how it's going to work out. All these prophecies about the Messiah and about a child that will be born and all this kind of stuff. Now he's getting the picture of how this is going to work. So she gave birth to a male child who will rule all of the nations with an iron scepter. Of course, was Jesus. And her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. Okay, boom. So that's the beginning. I was born, now I'm resurrected in heaven. So that's just, like a quick summary, right? Then the woman, who we'll find out are Jewish people, who Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the temple, as Daniel said, flee. Flee. Where are they fleeing to? They're going to flee into the wilderness. And the woman fled in the wilderness to a place that God has prepared where she might be taken care of, okay, for 1,260 days. Then, and here's a little tidbit, probably this happened before they flee into the countryside, right? I mean, Satan's probably getting kicked out of heaven just before the temple is desecrated by the Antichrist. So it's happening boom, 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 probably all in one day, however long that takes. It's all happening really quick. So, but then, now we have, few passages in Scripture where you have Michael and the angels fighting against the dragon and everything. And so you make a zillion movies based on a few verses here, because the only thing you we got that's like that. But, Michael wins the battle. And then the question is, well, how in the world do they fight? Like, what do they do? Is it Star Wars, boom, 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 and they got swords. And they seem to have swords, seem to have horses. I have no idea. Nobody understands how they fight. Like, nobody dies. How does one be more stronger than the other one? Because doesn't God just say, well, time for you to lose, Satan, and for you to win, Michael? I mean, nobody really understands how they go about fighting in the spiritual world. But they fought back, but he wasn't strong enough. He loses his place in heaven, so he no longer can be outside of the atmosphere of the earth. He is trapped on the planet. So now you have Satan and all of the angels, fallen angels, who kind of hang around and do all kinds of bad things, are actually here on the planet. That's why another reason why it's so bad. And these guys are nasty people. And so then he is down here, he gets really upset about this. And then it says, now we know that the end is coming. Satan has been cast down. We've only got 3.5 more years. Battle of Armageddon is going to come. And whammy, this is going to be over. And time is short. Satan knows time is short. He's only got 3.5 years. So then he decides, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and I'm going to attack these fleeing Jews and kill them all. So he sends out an army. The Antichrist sends out some kind of army. That's the water sending out over there. And then when it says the earth opens up and swallows them, people believe it's kind of like when Dothan and the other person, I don't remember his name, who came against Moses, and Moses said, the earth, if I'm in God's sight, then the earth will open up and they will all go down. And they did. So the same thing, this army's rushing to attack these people, and there's some kind of, the earth opens up or whatever, and the army falls in there, and they all are eliminated. Boom, they're gone. So then they escape from there, and then again it says, she escapes into the wilderness where she will be taken care of for a time and a half times out of the servant's reach. So the symbolism, once you kind of get past the symbolism, is pretty straightforward. It's not that super complicated, but a whole bunch of information that we don't really know about. And actually, you hardly ever see all those words for Satan all at once in one place. The enormous red dragon, that's where that comes from. That's the one everybody picks up in all the movies. It's the red dragon, right? And he also is called what? I've lost it there. What else is he called there? The great dragon was hurled down. The ancient serpent called the devil or Satan. So there you go. All those words there. All right, that's pretty straightforward. Let's see what we have then. So Satan is cast out of heaven. Let's just review some things we know about Satan. Satan was in Pergamum based on the letters that were written, and Jesus said that his throne was in Pergamum, which is in Turkey. And we notice all the time that Turkey has earthquakes and tragedies and all kinds of things. Okay, so Satan's unholy trinity, I should have said unholy. Satan's trinity is himself, the Antichrist, and the false prophet. And that's going to be really important to understand that. After Michael's cast to earth, the Antichrist and false prophet rise to power, of course. Then all three go out to deceive the nations. That's the next time that you really see anything about Satan. He kind of gives the Antichrist his power and everything, but he's out of the picture. It's all about the Antichrist and all about the false prophet and everything, not about Satan so much. But then they all go out to deceive the nations, fight God at Armageddon. And then after Armageddon, Satan is bound for 1,000 years in the abyss, which we'll get into. The abyss is a really big deal. And then after those years are over, he's released to go out one more time to deceive the nations. And they attack Jerusalem, and God just sends fire down and kills them all. That's the final fulfillment of the battle of Gog and Magog. Because it says right there. And so Gog and Magog can happen before then, but that's the final last one. All right? And then God throws all three. This is going to be really important. We're going to talk about it down the road here. When we get to chapter 20, and the judgment. He throws all three in the lake of burning sulfur forever. And it says that they are tormented forever. So we'll be talking about that and what that means compared to us. So 2 scriptures on what happened and what will happen to Satan, and these are really super famous. Isaiah chapter 14 and Ezekiel chapter 28. Those are the passages. We're not going to read them tonight because we won't get through stuff, but you definitely want to read them. They're very, very powerful. This is where it says that the reason why Satan fell is he had pride in his heart. He wanted to go onto the mountain of God, where only God the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit could go, which we didn't even know that until it says that there. And he was the biggest angel of all. He was the most powerful one. And he really just wanted to be a part of the Trinity. And in a way, most people believe that he wanted to usurp Jesus and take his place. Now, how a created being is looking at God of the universe and the God who holds everything together and says, I can take your place. So obviously it was pride. He was misjudged that. You wonder, how could he misjudge that? He's in heaven. He's seeing the whole thing. I mean, what's going on here? But, he did have pride rise up in his heart, and pride is obviously one of the biggest sins that we have as mankind, right? And so that talks about that, and then it talks about how he's going to be cast into hell and how he's going to be covered with maggots that never die, and that all the king's men and all the kings and all the people that are down there, I just really kind of get your mind about what is it saying here. But, they say, Satan has fallen. Look at this great God who was up there, and now he's just like us, weak. He's like Samson, He thought he was strong, now he's weak, he can't do anything, he's just laying there, and he's totally been destroyed. So then you have the escaping Jews that are protected, and then the question is where? So Petra is a place that people suggest. It was a really big, thriving wilderness location. It was kind of on the trade route, and they had all kinds of gardens, and they had irrigation, and they had all kinds of stuff. You can hear about it and read about it. I have a little bit of problem with that because I just don't know how, they say, well, they could rebuild it or whatever, but you can see pictures, you can see documentaries about it. It's not like it's that big. I mean, a few thousand people there at the most. You'd have to have really stocked up. You'd have to have water. You'd have to have all kinds of things. It could be, but it would have to be a fairly small group. I don't think you could put 15,000 people in there. Not going to fit. So I'm going to throw out the possibility that there's someplace else they go, and that's why it doesn't mention it. Maybe if you mention it, people would try to go mess it up before they got there. I don't know. But, they have, most people don't realize how many cultures and people, even churches and other people through the Middle Ages and everything, built entire cities underneath the ground where they held out. And they could hold out for 6 months, 9 months, a year and a half till the enemy walked away. And they were completely defensible. They had ways to feed the animals and to eat and do all that kind of stuff. So maybe they make some kind of great doomsday thing, and I don't know. But that would be those are the 2 things. No, it doesn't say where, and that's why people suggest that as a possibility because it's in the wilderness. But otherwise, we don't know. So that's chapter 12, and we have questions, comments, thoughts, ideas. Pretty straightforward, not too complicated. Okay. Obviously, if you don't have any sense of the symbolism, you struggle a little bit. Like, what do you mean, a woman and the sun, and what's this, what's this woman who's going to give birth and all that? You have to have, obviously, the gospel story. And who is this woman that runs out into the wilderness? Who are they talking about? But it is about the Jews. Okay, so chapter 13. Now we're going to divide chapter 13 in 2 parts. Because the first part of chapter 13 is about the Antichrist, and the second part is about the false prophet. And there's so much information about the Antichrist, and then there's so much information about false prophets. No reason to read the whole chapter. We'll just read half of it. To start with, we'll read the part with the first beast first. Okay, so Tom, if you could start it out there.
13, 1 to 10, is that where
Yeah, let's back up just 1 second. I'm sorry. I see that I did this one thing, which is good. So chapter 9, let's go back and review a little bit. Chapter 9, if you can remember, just jog your memory. If you can't remember, it's okay. But chapter 9 was about the scorpion locust plague and the 200 million man army, right? And then chapter 10 was really simple, right? It was about the judgments are sweet and sour. The angel wants to read the scroll, right? And then the other one is Elijah and Enoch are the witnesses for 1260 days. And then chapter 12 then, obviously, is Satan is cast out of heaven and the Jews are protected in the wilderness. So if you really think about the basic stories, you kind of like, it's not that, it turns out to be not quite as difficult as it is. So you can start with the very first, go down through there, there's some judgments, there's wormwood, then there's these scorpion plague, the 2 million man army, you know, the angel, the Enoch and those guys, and then Satan and the Jews. Now we're to chapter 13 already, right? So let's go to that then. I'm sorry.
The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads with 10 crowns on its horns. And on each had a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast its power and its throne and great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. People worshipped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast, and they also worshipped the beast and asked, "Who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it?"
The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies, and to exercise its authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. It was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. It was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names who have not been written in the Lamb's book of life, the Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world.
Whoever has ears, let him hear. If anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. This calls for wisdom, and I got to throw this in, it's the last verse, but it also applies to the Antichrist. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666, and we're going to talk about that briefly. So now let's go to this beast, and we're just going to go over some of the basic things about it. And right down there, the beast can be, it can refer, now this one can be confusing. When you read the beast and you look at the verses, there are not that many, but sometimes it's referring just to the 10 kings and the 7 countries, and sometimes it's only referring to the Antichrist, and sometimes it's kind of like referring to them both. So I give you the ones here that are in here. So Revelation chapter 3 verse 1, it's talking about the 7 nation federation is what I call it. 7 kings, 7 nation federation. But in verse 2 and 3, it switches, and now it's talking about the Antichrist, and the fact that he's going to be given this authority, and apparently, you know, one of the wounds is one of the heads is wounded, and then, you know, he gets resurrected, and there's talk about that in a little bit. But and then in chapter 17, which we haven't got to, it's talking about the woman who sits on the scarlet beast that's covered with blasphemous names and has 7 heads and 10 horns. But at the same time, in the context of that, it also kind of is referring to the Antichrist. So those right there is just specifically that. So it's all of that. The beast is the 10 kings, the 7 nations, the Antichrist, in essence, Satan himself. But it's not the false prophet. The false prophet is the second beast, which is the great prostitute. So that's a different person. Okay, so there's the map. It's the basics about the Antichrist. He rules over former Roman Empire. So everybody agrees with that. And that's just it. No, I don't know of anybody who disagrees with that. So here's some basic things about the Antichrist. And what I tried to do here, which I think I did fairly successful, there is so much information in him, but I think I summarized every major thing. I don't think that by the time we read through the list, you're going to be exposed to everything that in the Antichrist about him and what he did, except chapter 17 as to who he is. So, first of all, he's the central evil person in the tribulation. The Bible says more about him than most realize, because we're going to see that in a minute. He proclaims himself to be God at the temple. He rules for 42 months, 30 and a half years, or 1,260 days. It takes 1,260 days plus 30 more days to set up the abomination that causes desolation, which is his plan to deceive all the nations to fight Jesus at Armageddon that destroys everything. So, yeah, so it says he goes for 1,260 days, but it really goes for 1,290. Don't get messed up with that. The point of it is, from the last 30 days, everybody's on stage. The military guys from the east are coming over. The Antichrist, the false prophet, and the Satan are going out to deceive the nations and everything. So it's kind of like a whole different plan, coming to the final part of the plan. And then finally, he rules directly over 10 kings, 7-nation federation. He has authority over the entire world, but he is not a world dictator, and there are limits to that control. He has worldwide economic control by the use of the mark of his name, which is 666. So obviously, if you know anything about the world banking system, you have the Bank of International Settlements and the World Economic Forum and all those people, and the central banks of England and every other central bank around the world. Those are the people that run the world. Those are the people that have all the money. Those are the people that decide what the money is and what it isn't and whether you can have any of it. And so basically, you can understand, as we realize, we now know it's a computer chip that's going to be embedded into, this is not everybody. That's as simple as day is long, right? Because you can have a computer chip on you, on your right hand or forehead, in which you can track everything. It's just a little tiny chip. You can track every transaction. You can identify who you are. Nobody can steal from you. Just think of all the, everything that people are doing to steal your money will not be possible once you put a chip on and every transaction and your identification always will be verified by an encrypted code that nobody else can break. And so all the ways that people are losing millions of dollars and getting ripped off because you clicked on this thing or you clicked on that or you lost your card or somebody got your identity or they saw your PIN number, all that's gone. So imagine what people would think. They're the greatest thing in the world. Now we've known for years, these Christians have been talking about this, mark of the beast, but look how great it is, okay? And then he breaks, he's terrifying, he devours the whole earth. Oh, now let's go to the next page, and this is where we're going to read it. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to each read 7. So Tom's going to read the first 7, then Doug's going to read the 8 through 14 and so forth. We'll go around in circles that way. And these are all the verses in the Bible, basically. Most of them are in Daniel, but there are some in other places. Are we on page 47?
Okay.
Yeah, page 47. It's at the top.
All right, number 1, he is terrifying and devours the whole earth. Number 2, he subdues 3 of 10 kings. Number 3, he speaks boastfully against God, heaven, and those in heaven. 4, he tries to change the set times and the laws. 5, he is given power over the saints for 3.5 years, which is 42 months. He breaks the covenant in the middle by taking away the daily sacrifice. He sets himself up to be as great as the prince of the host.
He prospers in whatever he does. He throws truth to the ground. He has a stern face and is a master of intrigue. He will be destroyed by the breath of Christ's mouth. He confirms a covenant for many for 1/7, which equals 7 years. He sets up the abomination that leads to desolation in a wing of the temple. He has no regard for the gods of his fathers.
He distributes land at a price. He will invade many countries and sweep through them like a flood. He will invade the beautiful land. He will extend his power over many countries. It doesn't mean he gets them all, but he has a lot of control. He gains control over gold and silver and all the riches of Egypt. He takes 1,290 days to set up his abomination, causes desolation. He sets himself up in the temple and says that he is God himself.
He is accompanied by miracles, signs, and wonders from the false prophet. He is helped by a strong delusion sent by God. He denies that Jesus is the Christ. He kills the 2 witnesses. He receives his power from the dragon. He receives a wound that appears to be fatal, but Satan heals it. He makes war with the saints and kills them.
He and his image are worshipped by the world. He gains economic power over the whole world by his mark. He uses the 10 kings to make war with the Lamb. He destroys Babylon with the help of the 10 kings. He's cast into the lake of fire at the time of Armageddon.
Okay, I think that pretty much summarizes everything that the Bible says about him, but obviously if you go look at the verses, there are probably little nuances or some words here and there, but that's pretty amazing, isn't it? How much information there is about the Antichrist. So basically, the big thing in the book of Revelation is it's a battle between God and Satan, between his son, Jesus Christ, and the Antichrist, who we're going to find out was Antiochus the fourth. We'll get to that. But it also is Apollo, who somehow is in there. The Apollo person is kind of weird. He's the king of the abyss. And then you have the false prophet, who is the Holy Spirit. And then you have the city of Jerusalem versus the city of Babylon. So Jerusalem is where, it doesn't say this, but I absolutely believe this is true, and I think in Jewish tradition they would all say this. The Jerusalem, where Jesus died on the cross, was where the tree was that Adam and Eve ate the fruit from. And so when Noah built his ark, he built it near there, and then it left. I mean, the flood took it out to Mount Ararat. But then the reason why I believe that he did it, because where did he go after he got off the ark? He came back to Jerusalem. And then Shem, his son, was considered the king of Jerusalem. So Jerusalem has always been the place, because that was where Jesus was going to die. That's where Abraham was told to sacrifice Isaac. That's where David, bought the land in order to, have God's blessing to stop the plague of the killing of 70,000 men. That's where the temple was built. So Jerusalem is ground zero. And Babylon and Babel, the Tower of Babel, is the opposite. And so you have the Holy Trinity and you have the unholy Trinity. And they're at fight with each other all the time. And the question is, which side are you on? Because you've got to be on the winning side. If you're not on the winning side, you're on the losing side. Whoa, what happened? Don't click on that one. That is the take-home message there. Okay. So now we have Revelation chapter 13. He was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. Now I know that sounds like it means that he is like the world dictator. But remember, he has all these kings from the east that he's not controlling, 200 million man army. Those are not the Antichrist people. He's not over the north. He's not over Russia. I mean, he's got a lot of influence, but he's not the dictator over them. There's no indication whatsoever that he's the dictator over America, over the South America, over Australia, or any other place on the Western Hemisphere. He probably has a tremendous amount of control, but he's not the world dictator. His place where he can tell you whatever you want and you will do it is in Europe. He's like what the Queen said, stop all traffic on the highway. I want to see if I still have that power. They stop all the traffic. I don't know if you knew that, but they do that. So at any rate, they did do that. So anyway, he could do that in Europe. So he has a lot of power, but he's not actually the dictator of the world. Some people get confused about that because it is confusing, right? But he's absolutely positively the ruler over the 7-nation, 10-king European Federation of Nations, which is where the beast is, okay? And then I think 2 Thessalonians is really, really a powerful passage. The man doomed to destruction, he will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that's called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God, just like Apollo. I mean, you could see how these all fit together. And who else wanted to be considered God? Satan. He wanted to be God in place of Jesus. So, they got a family thing going on. The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders to serve the lie. Now, I believe that these things, people say they'll be technological, but I don't think it, you can say, well, you just blew that up with a missile. That's nothing there. I think we're talking about real supernatural manipulation from the spirit world, causing things to happen that nobody can understand. It's not something that, NASA can come up with, or, these guys that make all the planes and everything and all this. This is not what it is. It's actual supernatural signs and wonders that are undeniable, things that happen, like raising the person who gets a fatal wound, which is the Antichrist eventually, raising him from the dead. Like, that guy's dead. He said, well, this is another JFK thing. Everybody thought he came back to life, but we know better than that. Whoa, here he is. My goodness. He did come back. Who can fight him, So in all the ways of weakness deceives those who are perishing. They perish because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so they will believe the lie, and so that all will be condemned who have not believed the truth but have delighted in wickedness. So what is the lie? Well, people have been guessing about the lie. It's more like just not one thing. It's a whole system of things. A whole system of things. You got to be a part of the beast, and you can do this, and you worship him, and you get all your things taken care of, and everything's great. And my goodness, he can show you how the ancient and where they came from, and he can explain all about the aliens, and he can show you this and that and the other thing. And, it's a whole kind of thing. Every part of it is a lie. In Daniel it says he throws truth to the ground. So everything he says, but it's so massively woven into this wonderful thing that people go, wow, that really makes sense to me. And unless you're elected, in other words, unless you're one of the tribulation saints, you will think that that's a great idea. This guy's got it together. He knows. Nobody can take care of him, So, oh my goodness. Okay. Now we're going to go to any questions about the Antichrist. Now we're going to go to the second beast.
Where are we watching this?
No. Watching what?
Are we in the...
Oh, and are we... yeah, we can see it.
Intermediate heaven or what?
Yeah. When you're in heaven, you can see everything.
Okay.
I mean, I believe that. I believe people in heaven can look down and see what we're doing. I mean, they're righteous, they're good. They can see how stupid we are. I remember doing that too. So people say, I know my husband, my wife, my whatever can look down and see what I'm doing. Yes, I think they can. I really do. They're holy, righteous. Yeah, they can see it. Just like I think that you can go to heaven and say, hey, give me the video on the flood. I'd like to see that. Give me the video on the creation. I'd like to see that one. I mean, Lord can do that. If you're interested, he can, let's go back and review that thing. Okay? So yeah, we can see that.
What's the powerful delusion?
It's a big, huge, nobody really knows. It just...
People think things are true that aren't. He lets us, them...
Yeah, for one thing, he rises from the dead. Number two is, we'll get to this, is I believe that it says he once lived, is not living now, but will live in the future. He lived in the past. And the one person that lived in the past that was just like him was Antichus the fourth. We're going to go through that in Revelation chapter 17. It identifies him. And he's going to rise from the dead and say, I was this guy. Let me go show you all the history. I can tell you everything about, wow. And then he's going to explain all the things that people are interested in. He's going to be able to explain ancient aliens. And he's going to be able to explain the universe. And he's going to be able to explain everything you ever thought of. And he's going to have money. And he's going to give you security. And he's going to give you wealth. And you can have, you won't be, no more fraud. And not only that, but you can do whatever you want, and it doesn't matter. There's no judge out there who's going to tell you what you can do, so you can do whatever you want morally or whatever. It's all wonderful. Everything's good. Just go my way. So it's so over, but it doesn't actually say what the delusion is specifically, but people think it's just a whole combination of a worldview that gets so woven into a tight ball of lies that you just can't even see through the fog. And he's saying, and by the way, if you don't believe it, that's okay, I'll kill you. So you got death or his idea about how life should work. So, yeah, so it doesn't really say. Other questions?
Did you say earlier that all three of them get cast into the lake of fire?
Yeah, it says that in Revelation chapter 20, 19 and 20.
So, in other words, eventually they all get there together.
Yeah, they all get thrown in. The Antichrist and the false prophet are thrown in there at the Battle of Armageddon. They're captured and thrown in there. And then Satan gets 1,000 years relief. He goes down to the abyss. But when he comes up, then it says he gets cast down in there, Revelation chapter 20, with the other two, where they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. So that would be very interesting. We're going to get to that. This has some huge implications for us.
Wait a minute, I'm still not...
Yeah?
I thought that the Antichrist and the false prophet got there 1,000 years early.
Yeah, they did. They go at the Battle of Armageddon. Satan goes into the abyss, which is not the hell. Abyss is a different place. We'll talk about that.
Right.
Then he comes back after 1,000 years. So he gets an extra 1,000 years. But of course, once you get thrown in the lake of fire, any time that you weren't in there, you won't feel like you benefited much. Okay. You know? Does that make? Hopefully, I didn't talk too fast.
Well, I just wanted...
Yeah, just...
in my own head.
Yeah, so the Holy Trinity and the Unholy Trinity. The Unholy Trinity all get taken out. That's part of the purpose of the book of Revelation, is to show you that the Antichrist, Satan, and the false prophet, who is the opposite of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, will lose, do get captured, and they will be judged, and they will be tormented forever and ever. They lose. They lose the battle. Okay? Oh my goodness. Okay. So, other questions?
Yeah, they know everything we know, so they believe the lie. Those three believe the lie themselves. They know everything we know.
They are the lie. I mean, they're producing the lie. So why the question is, you know you're going to lose. You know that your time is short when you get thrown down to the ground. You know the book of Revelation, which says you got 1,260 days to the Battle of Armageddon, you lose. So why are you doing this? Like, I would hang out for a few more million years. Like, I'll get around to a Battle of Armageddon sometime in the future. Why are you trying? Why do they do this? It doesn't make any sense. Why does Satan and Antichrist want to do this in the false prophet? It's because they hate God that much. And they seem to think, you almost get the impression, that they seem to think that maybe there will be a possibility that they could actually beat God at Armageddon. Now, I believe Satan thought that if he tempted Jesus and Jesus sinned, that he would get power over Jesus, and that, technically was a possibility. I mean, if Jesus sinned, I don't know if the whole universe would rip apart. But, you know, there could have been, I could see where Satan said, well, you know, I can tempt Jesus and he'll fall. I mean, you know, what's the chances? Maybe he thought there was some chance. I don't know why he would do this and why he would pursue this, other than he hates God so much and he wants to destroy all mankind, wants to kill us, slice us up, mutilate us, burn us, sacrifice us, you know, torment us, because we're made in the image of God, and we replaced him, basically. So they know the lie because they're producing the lie. The Antichrist and the false prophet and Satan know the lie. They're the ones that made up the lie, whatever it is. Any other questions? I have total lack of time. 10 till. Okay, we're going to move pretty fast. Got to move fast. Okay, chapter 13. I guess, Tom, go ahead. 11, verse 11.
Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf, and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. And it performed great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to the earth, in full view of the people.
Because of the signs it was given to perform on behalf of the first beast, it deceived the inhabitants of the earth. It ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword, yet lived. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed.
It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name.
This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666.
Okay, for all that the false prophet does, it gives the most of the explanation there, and then here's the only other references. It says in Revelation 16, then I saw 3 evil spirits that looked like frogs. They came out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. They are spirits of demons performing miraculous signs. Again, it's not technological, it's actually supernatural signs of healing or whatever. And they go out to the kings of the whole world to gather them for the battle on the great day of God Almighty. So that's the other, and then this one, Revelation 19:20. But the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet, who had performed the miraculous signs on his behalf. With these signs, he had deluded those who had received the mark of the beast and worshipped his image. So there's one key. He says, this is what the truth is, and not only that, but I can perform all these miracles, and how can I perform these miracles if whatever I'm telling you is wrong? So then the 2 of them were thrown alive into the fiery lake of burning sulfur. And I think it's really important that it says they're thrown alive in there. And then Revelation 20:10 then finishes it off. And the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of burning sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet had been thrown. They will be tormented day and night forever and ever. So there we go. Those are the verses answers Doug's question and anybody else's questions. All right, so let's quickly look through the false prophet, what he does. He does a huge amount of stuff, and in the prostitute, you get a picture of the whole big thing, but it's not really that. It's on page 48. Facts about the second beast, also known as the false prophet. He has 2 horns like a lamb, and I don't know what that means. Like, people say, well, what are 2 horns? You know, what is that? It means something. Like, is he control over the political and over the religious, over the church and over the, you know, Eastern, Western churches, or is he over the churches and over the mystery religions? You know, what they probably mean something, but it's not clear. He is the spokesperson for the Antichrist. He speaks like a dragon because he's empowered by Satan, so he's very super convincing. You know how some people, you do whatever they say, you know, you believe them just because the way they say it. You know, he performs signs and wonders. He competes with the the two witnesses like Pharaoh's magicians with Moses. So he's doing his thing, signs and wonders, and the two witnesses are going there, well, I can do that. You do that, I'll do this. You know what I mean? So there's this battle between the Antichrist, who can do magical things, and the two witnesses who can do supernatural things. And now we're just back like it was with Moses going up to the Pharaoh and his magicians throwing the staff on the ground and it turned into a snake. Realize that they did that? People don't even think that's possible. That's not possible. They could do the first 3 or 4. Then they say, oh, I can't do the rest of these. This Moses dude's getting us, got a little bit more power than we got, right? He creates an image of the Antichrist and breathes life into it. He gets the world to worship the image, sets up the whole world economic system with 666. He, Satan, the Antichrist, gather the armies to Armageddon. So that's pretty much him. That's what he has. Any questions about that? It's pretty straightforward. Obviously, very powerful person. Obviously, super persuasive.
Maybe this is further on, or maybe I don't understand, but so there's saints now who believe.
Yeah.
And so if they don't take the mark and they can't do anything, where does it say what happens to them?
Basically, it says in the next chapter coming up that it's really bad. You're just going to have to hang on, you persevere, and everybody else that it talks about gets martyred. So not very many people are going to make it through the tribulation period who are actually saved. It's like, really? There could be that a few will make it, but you can't buy, sell, you do anything. I mean, right now it's terrible, right? They can have no-fly zone, can't go here, we can control your gas, we can control your transportation, we can control your pocketbook, we control everything about you. So how are they going to survive? They'll just have to go out and bunker it down. It does say in Isaiah, one place, I don't remember, but it's in the exact verse. It says, at that time, now remember, it's talking about the Jewish people who aren't believers, but they're Jewish people in the tribulation period, may become believers. At that time, go into your inner room and shut the door. I mean, you just got to go hunker down, like the preppers, whatever. Go get your 3.5 years worth of food. You're not gonna be able to do anything. You're not gonna be no basketball in your life. Okay, he's captured Armageddon and cast in the fire lake of burning sulfur. Yes, already did that. Okay. Any other things about him? Questions? All right. So I think we can yank through. We're not. Chapter 14 is real simple. Just read through this. The next ones are really pretty straightforward. We'll do 14, maybe 15, because they go really fast. It's really just reading the chapters. So tell me, you want to read the first long paragraph?
Okay. The Lamb and the 144,000, when I looked, and there before me was a Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a sound from heaven like the roar of rushing waters and like a loud peal of thunder. The sound I heard was like that of harpists playing their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders. No one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. These are those who did not defile themselves with women. They remained virgins. They followed the Lamb wherever he goes. They were purchased from among mankind and offered as first fruits to God and the Lamb. No lie was found in their mouths. They are blameless.
3 angels. Then I saw another angel flying in midair, and he had the eternal gospel to proclaim to those who live on the earth, to every tribe, nation, language, and people. He said in a loud voice, "Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the springs of water."
Second angel followed and said, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, which made all the nations drink the maddening wine of her adulteries."
A third angel followed them and said in a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast and its image and receives its mark on their forehead or on their hand, they too will drink the wine of God's fury, which has been poured full strength into the cup of his wrath. They will be tormented with burning sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment will rise forever and ever. There will be no rest day or night for those who worship the beast and its image, or for anyone who receives the mark of its name."
This calls for patient endurance on the part of the people of God who keep his commands and remain faithful to Jesus. Then I heard a voice from heaven say, "Write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, they will rest from their labor, for their deeds will follow them."
I looked, and there before me was a white cloud, and seated on the cloud was one like a son of man with a crown of gold on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Then another angel came out of the temple and called in a loud voice to him who was sitting on the cloud, "Take your sickle and reap, because the time to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is ripe." So he who was seated on the cloud swung the sickle over the earth, and the earth was harvested.
Another angel came out of the temple in heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. Still another angel, who had charge of the fire, came from the altar and called in a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle, "Take your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of grapes from the earth's vine, because its grapes are ripe." The angel swung his sickle on the earth, gathered its grapes, and threw them into the great winepress of God's wrath. They were trampled in the winepress outside the city, and blood flowed out of the press, rising as high as the horses' bridles for a distance of 16,000 stadia.
Okay, I'm going to explain that in a minute here. So, really quickly, it's pretty straightforward. The gospel is preached, the first angel, the gospel is preached to the whole world. There's no excuses. People can't say they don't know what the gospel is. They were warned, don't take the mark of the beast. If you do, you will not survive. You will end up, you will not be saved. It's done. You choose between the mark of God or the mark of the beast. Exactly how they preach the gospel to everyone, or it gives you the impression that the angel goes out there and yells at everybody. I don't think that's the way it is, but how do they actually do that? Okay. The second angel announces the soon fall of Babylon, which we'll get into in chapter 18. The third angel declares eternal judgment on all who worship the beast and take his mark. And then basically the trib is bad for the saints. So just like Linda was asking about, the tribulation is so horrific that a voice from heaven challenges the saints not to give up, but to have patient endurance. And the Spirit also says it's a blessing to die in the Lord from now on. Basically, he even thinks it would be better off to die. I mean, that's pretty bad, right? Now, if you're on the other side, you've got the mark, everything's fine. You might get stung by locusts. You got to get away from those guys. But the other side, oh, we're wonderful. At least for a few more days. And then the wine press. We'll go through this real quick. Yeah.
Can you say again about the second angel and the third angel? I missed what their messages were.
It's on page 50.
Yeah, 51.
On 50 on the left, right there, announces soon fall of Babylon.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
Babylon, yeah, on the left side. And page 50 by the picture there, the really nifty picture that somebody drew that I picked off of Pinterest. And the third angel declares eternal judgment on all who worship the beast. That's kind of like a summary statement of what they actually said.
Okay.
You see what they said and you go, well, what did they really say in English? Like if I was going to say it my way, how would they say it? Well, chapter 18 is all about the fall of Babylon, because Babylon is the city against Jerusalem. Jerusalem versus Babylon. Good. Other questions? Okay, the winepress vision of God's wrath is heaven's perspective on Armageddon. So again, you get Armageddon in chapter 6, you get Armageddon in chapter 8, you get Armageddon in chapter 14. And this, people, this is like a saying, this is like, a threshold or whatever, or, what do you want to say? The blood rising as high as the horse's bridle means that those horses are part of the battle You know, like, in other words, it's like you're out there in battle, and how bad is it? Well, you know, I was out there, I was so much into there was blood splatting all over the saddle of my horse. That's how bad it was. It doesn't mean that there's a flow of blood that's 6 feet tall, and it's, you know, that's not going to happen. But it means the battle is ensuing that far out, and that far is about 180 miles from ground zero, which is the Valley of Jehoshaphat, which is in Israel. So the whole area is just full of armies and full of destruction, and everybody's just killing everybody. And everybody's dying. It's terrible. Okay, other questions on chapter 14? So we wind it down. Okay, well, real quick then, a couple of things real quick. So chapter 15 is really short because it just says 7 angels with 7 bowls come out from heaven to say, we got the last judgments. I don't know why they didn't put chapter 15 and 16 together. It's like, why did you divide this in 2? You know, it's the same story. So chapter 15 is the 7 angels come out. Chapter 16 is wormwood. Here's how he blows everything out of the saddle. And then chapter 17 is really the one that's super hard. Chapter 18 is about Babylon falling. And 19 is about Jesus coming back. 20 is about the 1,000-year reign. And 21 and 22 is about the New Jerusalem and everything. So, but chapter 17 is the one that we'll have to go really slow through. Hopefully next week. How many people are going to be here next week? Justin and Linda are going to be down in Florida suffering. So at any rate, any other... Oh, yes, now I have my question. Do you think I should include the extra 60 pages of scripture on the Battle of Armageddon, and the battle and about all about the millennium period, and all the verses in the Bible written out so that people could read them? I have no idea whether people would say, oh yeah, that's really important, or no, that's not very important. I don't know. What do you think? How many people would say yes? I'm glad you put it in the notebook. Okay, well that's enough. That's enough people that say, okay, we put it in there. If somebody doesn't read them, he doesn't have to. But I doubt that you're going to go through the whole Bible like I did and find all the verses on Armageddon. So now that I did all that work and underlined it on top of that, at least you can benefit from it, right? Took me a while.
I bet.
You had to read through the whole Bible to do it, you know. But yeah, it took me a while, but you know, the thing that caught me, and I'll just end with this, we've got Tom, we're going to go to prayer requests, is that, you know, I started seeing how many verses and chapters and chapters and chapters. I thought, well, how many are there? You know, just how many are there? And then when I wrote them all out, I said, my goodness, this is changing my perspective. God must think this Battle of Armageddon is a pretty big deal. You know, and this millennial reign for 1,000 years on land, this is a pretty big deal. Like, this is big. This is really big. You know, it's not just people say, well, what does it matter about the future and about the tribulation and about the Battle of Armageddon? It's not that big a deal. Well, then why has he got like 50 pages of it written out, double-sided? You know? Okay, Tom.
Okay. Prayer requests. Metcalf family, continue to pray for them.